everybody, it's Romania Black, and we're on episode 17 of Vinland Saga, and I've got a couple comments to go over before we start this episode, but I'm not gonna lie, I'm feeling pretty lucky that we're watching Vinland Saga today, because the last 2 days I have been horribly sick, like really sick, like had a fever, was throwing up, had a headache. I think I slept from 12 p.m. yesterday till 10 a.m. today, and I'm just now feeling a human again. I went and got blood drawn earlier today to try to figure out what's wrong. I think it's some kind of like viral infection. I'm hoping it's just that, and it'll just take a while to get out of my system. But I've just not felt good these last few days. But I was like, man, I hope I'm feeling good enough to watch Vinland Saga, because the last episode was really good. And I want to see what's going to happen, because Thorfinn chose violence, seemingly. And you know what? It's just, I feel like Thorfinn at this point is coming at a crossroads where he has these idealistic ideas of stopping violence. He's like, getting peace through violence isn't feasible. And I agree with him on so many fronts, but as Einar has pointed out, and as the spirit of Askeladd, which is Thorfinn's inner voice, has pointed out, it's easier said than done. And it's really hard to say, oh, I'm never going to fight anybody. And then what happens if you're put in a situation where you have to defend yourself? Or in this case, he's defending Gardar. So what is Thorfinn going to do? What I do like about this is that Thorfinn is not using blades. He's just using his fists. And I feel like that is tying back and hearkening back to what Thor's told him, that a real warrior does not need a sword. And that also ties back to what Thorkel said, that Thor's was one of those guys that could just do one punch and you were out. Because here's the thing. I think what it's going to come down to is, yes, Thorfinn may have to fight for what he wants, but using a blade or using a gun or using a weapon, that's something that can permanently and fatally damage. Whereas just using your fists, yeah, it can get a point across, but it's not killing someone. And I think that's going to tie back to what Thor's was doing. Even when Thor's was fighting Askeladd's men, he didn't kill any of them, he just knocked them out. So I'm hoping that what Thorfinn does is kind of along the same line as Thor's, and maybe he knocks Snake out and he's like, okay, gotta go, and then lets Gardar and Arnheid maybe get away. So, but I don't know at this point, and there's so many what ifs, like Canute is looming in the background, so what do we do with that, right? So there's just lots of questions, and we're on episode 17, so we're nearing into the last part of this season. We still have lots of episodes to go, which is good, but because I don't want them to rush through this, but there's just lots of questions. So I do have a few comments to go before we start, though. Mariam Tara talked about that some people back when the manga chapters of this particular storyline was coming out, a lot of them called Arnheid a cheater. And I was like, I wouldn't go as far as calling her a cheater. I mean, one, she was a slave being forced to have sexual relations. You know, she couldn't really say no, otherwise her life could be in jeopardy. And two, I feel for her because she realizes her husband may be a different person and is not the same Gardar that she fell in love with. And she just wants to keep her child safe. She's already lost one kid. She doesn't want to lose a second kid. So the idea of her seeking some semblance of normalcy in her life, I don't think that makes her a cheater. I feel for Arnheid. Her voice actress has been amazing. Someone in the Discord commented that her voice actress is actually not well known for doing anime, but rather doing like dramas, and I'm like, that makes total sense. Like the emotion and rawness behind her voice is just so, it feels real and authentic. And if she does actually dubbing shows in real life or live action shows, makes all the difference. But yeah, I don't feel like Arnheid's a cheater at all. I feel like she's just trying to do the best she can in the circumstance given to her. And I feel like that'll tie back to Thorfinn in this episode. He's just trying to do the best he can in this situation, right? It's not a good situation, but what can you do, right? And then evil communist Pickle Rick commented about Thorfinn telling Arnheid that he probably should tell her he's a warrior. We talked about in the last couple episodes, he's not revealed that to her yet. That it would be a good thing to tell her, because that would get her to understand that, Thorfinn's changed a lot. Thorfinn's become this different person, so maybe there's a chance for Gardar to change as well. So I hope that could be the case. But yeah, I don't know. What I don't want to happen to Thorfinn is I don't want him to regress. If he has to realize that there is going to come a time where he has to defend his ideals, but maybe not use weapons, but use his fists, and he has to do that, if we have to just develop and evolve this mentality and ideology as we go, awesome. I just don't want Thorfinn to regress back to the pit that he clawed himself out of earlier in this season. So we'll see, right? But real quick before we start, I want to give a quick shout out to our philanthropy tier over on Patreon. These patrons support me each month by going above and beyond and giving me extra to help me buy streaming services, to get sites to host this thing, to buy the anime and manga I use to react on this channel. And basically they're just awesome people that go above and beyond when they don't have to. So a special shout out to all patrons who support me, but especially to Edgar, to Dana, to Tyrone, to Nameless Monster, to Truck, to Kenny, to Arjo, to Shimoyama, to Be Happy, to Translucent Men, to Eric, to Sunspots, as well as Anime Annie. Thank you all so much. I really appreciate it. All of my love. So yeah, I've been waiting for this episode, y'all, and I'm really excited. So we're not going to waste any more time. We are going to start episode 17 of Vinland Saga, y'all. And we're going to do that here in 3, 2, 1, and let's go. Well, I was crying. That got me. That really got me because it was so beautiful. Like, it was just, there's not going to be a whole, I don't know how much discussion we'll get out of this episode because it was such a very just show, not tell episode with not a lot of dialogue, but a lot of visuals. And it was mainly to see Gardar off and to basically just go through the life of this man who, in trying to do right for himself and his family, ended up caught in the worst circumstance, and showing some humanity behind Gardar, which was needed because what we've seen so far of Gardar is kind of this just like animalistic, primal, he's just fighting to survive. But then when as he's dying and we trace over his life, you realize that, damn, like, it got me emotional. I was like, he's just a guy. Ugh. And it was so sad. And I think it makes it even sadder because, like, got really emotional about this. It makes it even sadder because you know that Yukimura has, like, oh my gosh, why am I so emotional? Damn it. It just, like, it hits you because Yukimura has like 3 sons of his own. And so, damn, I'm like getting all sappy. Getting all kinds of sappy. But it hits because Yukimura, the creator, has sons of his own. So that, like, that portrayal of fatherhood is just, it just makes you so sad because you can kind of see, like, you can see the mangaka putting some of himself into the narrative, and it's just, it's beautiful because you can just see how he would probably feel in that situation. But, sad days. I did not expect to be crying over Gardar, of all characters. We've known him for like 3 episodes. But, like, his story's been so tragic and sad. I'm like, ugh. And I think what makes it worse is the fact that at the very end, you see them all surrounding the cart. So it's just like, it's like Arnie and them, they're going back to Ketil's farm. Like, nothing's going to change. Thorfinn's going to be in trouble. Einar's going to be in trouble. And it's just like them trying to do good, and it leads them to them getting in trouble. It's just like, it feels, in one sense, it feels futile because it feels like they did everything in vain. But then in the other sense, it feels like, no, Gardar had to get this send-off. Like, it was like a send-off for his humanity to cross over into the other world. But, oh my God, like, I didn't expect to get this choked up about Gardar of all characters, but here we are. And so Thorfinn. So Thorfinn versus Snake. I did not know how that was going to go. And honestly, let's be real. Snake could have killed Thorfinn. I think Snake could have killed Thorfinn. I think if Snake had been trying a little bit harder, he would have killed Thorfinn. I really think so, right? I think that would have been the case. And then, because Thorfinn's like, this guy is faster than anyone I've fought before. More than Thorkel, more than Askeladd, which Askeladd was holding back. I think just like Snake, Askeladd was holding back a bit, but faster than Thorkel. Like anybody Thorfinn's faced before. So Snake is a force to be reckoned with, right? That is very true. And the curve of his blade, I don't know anything about the swords. People have been trying to tell me about the swords in the comments. I've been doing my best to ignore because I don't want spoilers. It feels very, and I don't want to stereotype, it feels very Middle Eastern, kind of the curve of the blade. So I don't know what that says as far as that goes. But he makes the comment of where he's from. And I want to get back to that. The dagger's range, yeah. But what I love about the scene between the two of them is that they're both feeling each other out. And Thorfinn's like, he's way too strong to just be working on this farm for no reason, right? And meanwhile, Snake is like, he's way too strong to just be a slave. So they're both like feeling each other out. The way that he talked, though, is that I want to get to that point where he says who they are. Because he's like feeling, Snake never looks like totally angry with Thorfinn. He's just like, you're in my way, kid. Get out of the way. Let me go to Gardar. I need to finish this business. This is something between me and him. You're not involved. And Thorfinn's like, you don't need to do this. Like, stop. One of those scenarios. And just, I love how Thorfinn looks in this episode. He looks so good. I will simp. He's like, what kind of monsters surrounded him? So yeah, Snake filling him out and realizing that Thorfinn's been through quite a lot more than he's letting on. And Snake's kind of like, what's up with you? Why are you like this? What have you dealt with? What's going on? Explain. That's kind of the situation that he's in right now. Meanwhile, Thorfinn's kind of like, who is this guy? Why is he working on this rando farm when he's this strong? And I just love that Thorfinn has like this combo moves that he incorporates. The choreography of the fight I really liked. I like the animation, the fight style, the choreography, especially for Thorfinn, who's fighting without any weapons. He's just using his fists and his feet. It's good to see that Thorfinn hasn't forgotten like all the things he learned while fighting. He still has that like ingrained into his memory, into his muscle memory, but the fight choreography between the two of them is really good. And just like the snake poking, like it feels very much like a viper. I wonder if that's how Snake, I have been wondering why Snake got his nickname, right? Because usually when you think of snakes, you think of people that aren't trustworthy or that are slimy or slippery or manipulative. And Snake doesn't come across like that at all. Like personality-wise, he doesn't seem like a snake. But if we're going with the very stereotypical, the blade, is it Middle Eastern? You think of snake charmers, you think of snakes in the desert. If you think of that, or if you think of how he fights, where he like strikes, it feels like a viper, like just lunging at something, right? So it could be that he's named after the fight style as well as culturally where he's from. We'll see. But yes, then of course, I don't know if that's going to leave a scar on Thorfinn from Snake's blade. I don't know if that's going to leave that. And so Snake realizes that what I have to do is get in between the cart and Thorfinn, and then we'll be fine. Because that's all that it takes. He's like, at this point, he's like, he's got me. He doesn't have to fight me anymore because he's right there with Gardar. He figured out how to get to what he's trying to do. And so that's when he sees Gardar there in the cart. And Arnheid's like, please don't, Mr. Snake. Please let this go. He's like, I can't overlook it. And then, of course, Spherical's like, look, whatever I can do to pay for the loss of your men. And I like the Snake says, it's not the money. He's like, I don't care about the money or the farm. He's like, you've been trying to sell me your farm, old man, the last 6 episodes. He's like, I don't care about money. And this is what he says. He says, both me and my men are a bunch of stupid and nasty scumbags. And he says here, we're drifters who can't use our real names because of what we've done elsewhere. So he's done something in the past that has made him, it's kind of like a witness protection. They're a bunch of people that can't, it almost sounds like they're criminals, right? That they're criminals themselves on the run. They can't use their real names because of them being noticed from their past, which is kind of fascinating because it's suggesting like, how are you truly different than a slave then? If you can't go back home, you can't use your real name, you're forced to be employed by others under a false guise. How very different is that from slavery? Except you can go where you want and you're getting paid. I guess that's the big difference. But it's kind of a form of slavery in itself, right? So that's very fascinating, right? I find that so interesting. He says, what does it mean? What does that mean? It doesn't matter if we die, huh? So yeah, and now that comes out that Snake, it's more than just his men dying. It's the concept of why does this man's life be any more than why is this man's life worth any more than ours? And that's a really good question. It's not. Like, no one's life is worth any more than anyone else's. And I wish that Thorfinn had said something about that, but I don't know if that's going to come back later. If it's going to get brought up, if that's going to get brought up later, that no one's life is worth more than others. I mean, Snake has every right to be mad at Gardar. Gardar not only killed his men, but he massacred them. Like, he bit a guy's throat out. Like, yeah. So he has every right to be upset and angry and want revenge. And he clearly does not hold the weight of the death in the same way that Thorfinn does. So, but in the end, whose death is worth more than the others? That's not really the case, is it? No. And so he says, tell me, Thorfinn, Arnheid. Give me an answer. Tell me how much more he's worth. He's not worth more. That's the problem. But I wanted Thorfinn to say something like no one's death is worth more than the other. And they just can't happen. He's like, they're not that different, huh? And no. And he's like, the cost of life can only be paid with life. And that's kind of the mentality that Thorfinn is trying to steer away from, is the idea that the cost of life is only paid with life. Like, that doesn't lead destruction getting met with destruction equals nothing. It doesn't breed creation. It doesn't give you anything positive. It's just two negatives. Two negatives don't create a positive in this situation. And that's kind of the mentality that the world around them views. And Thorfinn's like, we need to kind of change that, because a negative plus negative is not going to equal a positive in this case. And no one benefits from each other just killing each other. No one benefits from that, right? I wanted him to say something about his sword, though. I wanted him to say something about it. Where did he say that? He talks about, find where he's talking about. And he talks about where he's from, right? Didn't he mention that? He mentioned that at some point, I thought. He's strong, don't get worked up. I want to go back and find what he talked about with the blade and everything, because I feel like he's brought that up at some point. It was like Mijalkard or something. Like, what's he doing defending a farm? Yeah, he says about the blade. I want to get back to Thorfinn talking about it. He's strong. Yep, what's a warrior like this doing defending that? Okay, anyway, he goes back and stabs Gardar, which pretty much deals the killing blow, right? And then he asks Thorfinn if he still wants to fight. And Thorfinn's like, I'm not going to avenge Gardar. Like, he's just like, no. He's like, this is kind of a done deal. And even Sphyrical's like, no, it's done. He's like, Arnheid, you're the one who cut Gardar's bonds, aren't you? And the answer is yes. Yes, she is. You two will be punished accordingly. Until the master's return, you'll be bound. And that's when Gardar, like, again, like an animal, like just a freaking animal that's on a pure adrenaline high at this point, he gets a hold of Snake, right? And Snake can't escape him and is getting crushed. And honestly, it's Arnheid and Thorfinn that save him, because otherwise he would have died, right? Otherwise that would not have gone on well. Nope. Not at all. So yeah, I that makes me wonder if Snake is going to try to have any, I don't think he'll have any pity on Thorfinn. I think he's mad because Thorfinn fought him. I mean, he's not going to try to kill Thorfinn because that's not Snake's style. And he's obviously not going to try to kill Arnheid because she's the master's lady and has his baby. So I'm just like, what do we do then? What do we do with that? So I think Snake is going to tie Thorfinn up, probably with Einar, and then we'll see what happens. I mean, like, if Ketil and them return, are they going to get in trouble? I could see Fox and Badger trying to hurt Thorfinn and Einar before Ketil and them get back. But then once they get back, what we're going to do? Because then we've got this trouble here too, you know? Like, how is this going to get spun? How is the story going to get told? How is Snake going to explain things to Ketil? What is Ketil going to do? It's just a big mess. Just a big mess, right? Okay, I did find, he says, a warrior of Miklagard. I'm just going to look up what Miklagard is real quick. It's in Istanbul! Istanbul, of course! Of course, Istanbul. Okay. Vikings admired Constantinople. They chose a name for it, Miklagard, which means the great city. The name survives to this day in Icelandic. Oh, it means Milkar and Gardar, the large city. Oh, okay. So he is a Viking from a big Viking city. Interesting. So Snake is from a big Viking city in Istanbul. Interesting. Okay. So probably was trained by someone that was, so there's probably, if it was a big Viking city, then there's probably a lot of famous warriors there that trained him. I wondered if he was like a prince. If he was like a prince on the run or had killed someone and was on the run for it, and that's why he couldn't use his real name anymore. But he says, I'm a warrior of Miklagard. Interesting. Interesting. The sword being from Istanbul makes a lot of sense. I'm on board with it now. Okay, gotcha. And the fact that Arnheid is the one that saves them, that gets Gardar to snap out of it and let Snake go. I'm assuming that probably Spherical and Thorfinn got Snake back inside the house while she got away. And then Arnheid just telling him that their son Hajalti is with his brother in Bricka. And that's where they're going to go see him because she knows. At this point, he's bleeding everywhere. She knows he's going to die. And I think that's what got me too, is that Arnheid to the very end just sat with him. She's like, we just need to take him. Just need to appease to him, take him on a journey, and then let him die. Because if we try to hold him here, it's not going to work. He's just too far gone at this point. And then Thorfinn even knows too. And he asks to take the cart, and they both go off with it. And she says, I can't thank you enough to Thorfinn. Gardar is already, and she's like, I know. When Thorfinn says Gardar's already, she's like, yeah, I know he's dying, but this is just what we have to do. It's just how it has to go. And the sad thing is, I thought for a second, like maybe that she'd get to somewhere where she could get away, but she doesn't. They end up taking her back. What the hell? What the hell? Why? And it felt very Gladiator, the idea of like the sun breaking through. It was kind of weird because the sun breaking through, it almost looked like the ocean was in the sky, which is so crazy. But just the idea that he's by himself on the cart, which is interesting. And it seems like now, at first I was wondering why he was by himself on the cart, but by the end when he dies and he's by himself on the cart alone, that's because he's passed on. So this was all just him like following the road to home, the road to the end, right? The scary, sad thing is that Arnheid's not with him because she's still alive, but Hajalti is in the vision that he has. So the question is, has Hajalti died and was waiting on him? Or was that just a vision based on what he was talking with Arnheid about and Hajalti's still alive? We don't know. By the logic of the show, showing us only the ones dying, so only him by himself with Hajalti, the logic of the show would say that Hajalti has died and that that's just him and he's finally reconnected with his son. That's what it would tell you, that Hajalti has passed on. But we don't know that for sure. I would just feel like if it was a vision, he would see his wife along with Hajalti, but we don't know. We, the audience, are left to just guess whether or not the kid lived or died. But just such a journey. Like, he feels bad for all these men that are slaves, abandoned by the gods, right? These unfortunate men. And we see through him dying and him like going down this road towards death, we see like the flashback, and it fills in all the gaps for us, the audience. We see him like crouched down there getting bought as a slave, and see him like whimper and how cowardly he is, right? And how in pain he is. And then we cut back to him and Arnheid, and Arnheid knows that he's dying, and she's just waiting for it all to go down. And then he sees like the dandelion and remembers his son being born. And I give Mappa props. Mappa often, we talked about this with baby Eren in Attack on Titan. Mappa's not great at drawing babies. They're not great at drawing cute babies. I would say it looks pretty realistic. If you've ever seen a baby in real life, a newborn baby is not cute. I don't care what anybody says. Anybody that's like, oh, here's my newborn child, and you're like, oh, he's cute. You're lying. That kid looks like a little alligator wrapped up in a blanket. Yeah, no newborn baby is adorable. I'm sorry. If people tell you your newborn child is cute, they are lying to make you feel better after you've had 10 hours of labor. They're just trying to, ease the situation of, sorry, you pushed this watermelon out of your vagina, but it's not cute. Now give it a couple months. Give it 6 to 7 months. I'm sure he'll look adorable. And that's kind of what happens in here. But yeah, I give Mappa props that they're like, no, babies in real life are pretty ugly when they're born. And then a few months later, they start to get cute. Yeah, I have seen maybe I could count on one hand how many naturally born cute babies I've seen. Most of them are little wrinkly balls of flesh. But just the idea, he's like, your father shall fight for you. And just how happy he looks, and how he like sits there, and like we see from the very beginning, going back to the beginning of the season with the idea of moving forward and pushing onward. And we see the guy, the swordsmith, and we see the kid, the baby with the blood on its cheek, and it was Hajalti this whole time. Like we see all of that. And we see how like the woes of, that's kind of what got me too, because I was imagining the mangaka as a father of 3 sons, like seeing all of this, like the baby crying and not knowing what to do, where he's like, how do we make this baby happy? And then saying like he's gonna fight for you, and like all these fatherly things that Gardar does. And I'm getting emotional again, damn it. All these things that Gardar does, it made me think that the mangaka was putting himself in the place of Gardar to have this human moment, to show him like trying to be a father for his son, and then it all just falling apart, and him being powerless in it falling apart, right? It's just so sad. And then yeah, seeing him like when he was a year old, like learning to walk, seeing him like try to change the diaper, look at him, and then like getting peed in the face. It's so cute. And then just seeing like life and death in this big balance. And that's just how the world works. It's just a cyclical thing of life and death. And then, but there's these beautiful moments. And then we see him bleeding out. And we go back to him fighting in the tournament for his son, right? And smearing the blood on his son's face. And we cut immediately from that moment to him getting beaten by the one man that took him in as a slave. And just the contrast of that, the contrast of the beauty of life and this happiness of fatherhood with the brutality of being a slave, and how, because in the one scene with them in the match, it's like the violence is part of their culture and it's viewed as a good thing, and the blood getting smeared on his son's face is a sign of pride. But then you cut to the next instance where violence is suddenly something that's cruel and horrid, and it's like, where is the line, and what do we draw it at, right? And it makes you think so many things watching this. And him saying, for honor and wealth, he got to the point that he's at. And he asks how, the whole line, for honor and wealth, like I became a slave out of a foolish, greedy pursuit of honor and wealth. And that's what got me here. And so he asks how old Hajalti is, if he's 8 or 9. And the moment that Arnheid says 6, that it's been 5 years. So she was a slave for 2 years before Thorfinn and Einar got there. And then 3 years passed. And he's like, oh, so he'd only be 6. He's like, it feels like so long. You lose track of time. I've lost track of time since becoming enslaved. He's like, I missed his cute years. He was only 1 when I last saw him. He's probably forgotten about us. And that's such a horrible thing to say, because then you're like, you don't know if he's dead or not, and has he forgotten about them? And Arnie has to sit there and listen to it. It's just, And he says he's my son. He'll surely grow into being a prankster. And talks about him playing pranks and like lighting the tails on fire of the horses. And him and Arnie have this beautiful little moment. And he says when he's old enough, he'll want to go adventuring. All boys do, but I won't allow it. And the moment he grabs her hand, like in this beautiful, like human moment, their hands are like brittle and raw, and like their nails are chuffed, and it's just so hard to look at. And then he lays his head down saying, I'm tired. Like he's just dying in that moment. God. And I feel for her. Aren't he having to go through all this? Like seeing her child taken from her, being enslaved, watching her husband die in front of her. Like, girl cannot catch a break. And then the hardest moment for me was when he goes back and sees like them making the deal to go and fight, and him leaving his wife and son behind. And he can see in her face how sad she is and how afraid she is and how she doesn't want him to go. And in that moment, it's like Gardar regrets leaving his wife and son. Like for the honor and wealth, for the iron. He's like, he leaves it all. He left it all behind. And then you can see like just the pain and regret in his face. Like if he hadn't gone, what would have happened? If he just stayed, what would have happened? And maybe they would have been together. But that's not what happens. And then he tells Arnie and Hjalti that he'd never leave their sides again. I mean, how could you not be sad if he said that? And her starting to cry. And the tears on her face, the tears hitting his face is what wakes him up as he passes on. As he sees in the rain, like everything's beautiful and lush again. And he's home. That killed me. Just when he goes home, and then he goes back and sees his son. And his son looks so cute. Like his son sitting there. His son sitting there on the swing waiting for him. That's what got me. Was his son there waiting for him to come home. Oh, y'all. And then he says, I'm home. And then those are his last words. They're saying, welcome home. As everybody surrounds them. Oh my God, it's twilight. Oh my God. So what do we do? What do we do? So Arnie's gonna go back. And Gardar's dead. And Thorfinn, I'm sure, has been taken captive. And I'm sure Sverkel is being shut up in his home. And I'm sure Einar's been captured too. And we don't know if Ketil never coming back yet. What's going to happen? I mean, they did technically save Snake's life. So maybe Snake won't kill them. But I don't know where we go to from here. Not at all. Not a clue. Not a clue. All I know is we have 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24. We've got 7 episodes left, which is plenty of time for Canute to get there and cause a muck. Plenty of time for Canute to get there and cause a scene. But just Gardar's character, I feel like he was only here for such a short time, Gardar's character was. But it was such, not only was Gardar's character a great way for Thorfinn to kind of flesh out what he truly thinks is important as far as why we want to help others, and fleshing out like the do we kill people, do we not kill people when we fight, do we defend, what do we do, but also to kind of flesh out Snake's character, and also just to show what slavery does to someone, like how the links it pushes people to their breaking point and the darkness it pushes people into, but that at the end of the day, no matter what that darkness was, and this is a guy that like bit a guy's throat out, and I was crying for him by the end of it, because he's just a man that was pushed to the brink of darkness and fell. and then was able to have this one last ride to go back home to the afterlife. It paints a very vivid picture that even the people that seem the cruelest and scariest, that they're just human. And at the end of the day, they have similar aspirations and goals as anyone else. And it's just, what do we do with that now? What do we do with that now? So I don't know, y'all, but I'm curious to know your thoughts down below. This episode was so visual. There wasn't a lot of dialogue or things with it, but I'm curious to see what we're going to get next week. So we shall see. But in any case, I hope you all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe. Take care. And yeah, I will be back next week with episode 18 of Vinland Saga Season 2.